Okay. All right, welcome everyone. It is 6:03 and I will call this meeting of the Lunenburg Town Council to order. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The first order of business is a motion to approve the agenda. I'd just like to note that there were two sort of late breaking items for the agenda. One is the annual proclamation for Purple Day, which we will put in under 6C, if that's amenable to everyone, and a residual item related to our finalizing the sale of the Angus Walters house, which we will put in under 7C as its unfinished business, if that's okay with everybody. So presuming that is, and seeing no dissent, can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Any additions, deletions to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. That takes us on to the March 9th, 2021 Council meeting minutes. Can I have a motion to approve those as circulated? Moved by Councillor Sanford, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Are there any errors or omissions to note? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. So under item 5, we do have a public presentation. We have Chris Aiken with us from the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Program Coordinator regarding recent activities and programs information. And she's brought a delegation of supporters, which I'm sure she'll introduce to us. So we'll have a 10-minute presentation following introductions and 5 minutes of questions as we normally do. Chris, the floor is yours. Sorry? Okay, we'll get, Heather, can we just stop the clock? And if you push the
there
button.
we go. Thank you. So as chair of the board of the Lunenburg County Senior Safety Partnership Society, newly incorporated, I'm delighted with our staff to be here to meet with your newly constituted council for the first time. And we are so pleased also that we have Jenny Birtles as your representative on the Partnership Society board. So tonight I'm just going to say thank you for having us. We have Chris Aiken, as you know, Carol Hipwell, who's with us part-time also. And I'm going to introduce Staff Sergeant Paul Coughlin, who you all know, who will say a few words about the relationship with the RCMP. And then we'll have Chris and Carol, and then at the end, we'll have our funding request and questions. So thanks very much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for letting me say a few words in support of our senior safety program. Just want to start out saying, as you know, the police in Lunenburg County respond to many calls in the run of a month. And some of the calls involve assisting other agencies like EHS, fire, family and children's services. So a lot of these calls take time away from other jobs that we try to do to ensure public safety. So a lot of calls involve, not a lot of calls, but we do get many calls that involve seniors that have no family support and maybe not engaged with the community and not getting support from the community. So they sort of fall between the cracks. And even though we do have a provincial agency that does assist with adult protection and ensure that the safety of adults to some degree, we found that they don't provide that long-term intervention that's required for seniors. So we're lucky to have our Lunenburg Senior Safety Program. For the police, it's really important that when we respond to a call that involves a senior that's in need of help, that we have someone to refer them to. And often we'll call their senior safety coordinator to come in and provide that assistance. They'll do, first of all, an assessment that we're really not qualified to do to determine like what help the senior may require. They can provide like follow-up, family, they can check on seniors for family. And a lot of these things that they do take police out of the picture and put the community back into the picture to help out seniors where they can best be helped. So it's a great program. We've had a few of these presentations already, and I'm always, I shouldn't say surprised, but at the end, there's always people that praise senior safety, and they know people that have been assisted by senior safety program. And it's a great program to have in the community. So thank you very much for your support, and I hope you continue to support them.
I don't know if I can follow that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Paul and Penny. It's so nice to see so many familiar faces and some new faces too. We're going to give you a little rundown of what our program is to kind of help you figure out where it fits in. We are a nonprofit, community-based service that works closely with law enforcement and other partners to help meet the safety needs of seniors. We provide one-to-one and community education programs, presentations, and referrals to other agencies. We network with community partners and advocate on behalf of seniors with anyone and everyone. Other programs we're involved with include the Vital Life and Senior Friendly, as well as many community outreach projects, which has been particularly important during the pandemic. Another program that we promote is Project Lifesaver, and that's a nonprofit search and rescue program that helps caregivers find their lost loved ones. And every time we see another program or project come up, we do the research and figure out where it fits in.
You can
Next
stay on
slide.
that slide there.
Oh, there,
So-
yeah.
Yep, perfect. So I'm Carol Hipwell, and I'm a part-time senior safety coordinator. Our service is available to anyone aged 55 and above. Anyone can refer to our program, and we receive referrals from law enforcement, from our community partners, other community members, family members, and other services. It's voluntary, so people can refuse service. If we go out and they say no, then we have to step back. It's a confidential service, and we do require consent in order to share information with other agencies. And we do fall under the realm of a duty to report if we find a situation that falls under.
Next slide. This slide depicts the percentage of service across the 5 municipalities. 44.5% of the population of Lunenburg County is 55 years or older. This graph reflects our client base in 2020 across the 5 municipal units that we serve. It doesn't indicate the proportion of time that we've served in each municipality, of course, because each client's needs are different. There were periods during the pandemic that comprehensive record keeping wasn't possible, and we didn't tally every telephone call or every email, but according to the data collected, we received 339 new referrals last year, with a client base of 1,508, and we carried out 334 home visits or doorstep deliveries. We also distributed 520 vials of life, which are a communication system for emergency personnel. And we presented to roughly 170 individuals, either in person or online. Of course, this number was lower than in years previously because of the pandemic.
Next slide. So the pandemic, as Chris noted, has created a great source of ever-changing information and protocols. So like other services, we had to quickly pivot to alternative ways of delivering our service. For instance, we had to limit our direct contact with clients initially, and we focused on community outreach projects. We called them doorstop drop-offs, like isolation care kits, art kits, and then we also were involved with caring calls and the warm line from the Shelburne County Mental Health Association to connect people who are lonely. We also arranged meal delivery, and most recently we had mama bears and mindfulness boxes donated to us that we have been giving to our clients. The mama bears, they love these little bears. An important consideration and the benefit of the direct contact that we do is the eyes-on that we get within the home of the individuals, because oftentimes they present differently. If they're in a doctor's office, it may not be the same as when they're in their own home. So it gives us eyes to the most vulnerable sectors. And so there's lots of communication between us and our partner organizations, and we find solutions and supports that we can.
Next slide. Supporting seniors to help them live safely at home is a priority of our program. In one situation, we know of a senior who has been connected to our program for many years. They've needed assistance with everything from completing forms, grants, to wellness checks. Staying at home for as long as possible has been their number one priority, and they've endured hardships to do it. A health crisis and a housing repair need was the most recent catalyst for our service, and working in partnership with many other organizations and services and programs, we were able to help have the repair done and services increase so this person could remain at home. Raising awareness and supporting seniors impacted by elder abuse is a core component of our service as well. And incidentally, we have seen an increase since the pandemic, so mindful of that. In this case study, a senior was reportedly assaulted by their primary caregiver, their support person, and the accused was removed from the home. An adult protection referral was submitted by the senior, and they were deemed to not meet the criteria of a person in need of protection. So vulnerable and alone, this person needed supports. With the help of the United Way, we were able to secure an emergency cell phone so they could call if they needed someone in a quick way. We also set up food delivery, transportation. We made other referrals for service, and we discussed elder abuse and action and created an action plan. What can we do if? In the end, the senior may choose to have that loved one return to the home. But with the new connection that we've made, they now have someone that they can call if they need us.
Another aspect of our service has been legal accessibility for information and resources on topics of like personal directives and estate planning. We were lucky enough to have a grant from the Law Foundation of Nova Scotia that gave me that part of my job. One couple in rural Lunenburg had no internet, they had no computer access, and they were concerned about the process and the documents required to get their wills and estate documents done. And so, and how to get to the legal aid assistance that they needed. Some documents like marriage certificates, they needed to know where to go to find those. And follow-up for some clients has been to actually attend with them to go to legal aid with them, because they feel more secure when somebody else is there. Then I can listen to what's going on as well. And afterwards, you know how you get that information overload. I'm able to talk through what they heard again. Oh, is that our time?
The egg timer has gone off, but as we've customarily done in the past, perhaps a counselor could ask a question that would enable somebody to have the time to finish. Yeah.
This is one other
So
moment.
yeah, we've got 5 minutes worth of questions, and we'll go to 6:20. The floor is yours again.
So another client was referred by a neighbor because they were being evicted because they didn't pay their rent. After speaking to the client, they had fallen, they'd injured themselves, they were being financially abused, their driver's license had been suspended, they needed home support, and they were living in squalor. Altogether, 14 agencies and partners were employed to help this person. And one component of this service was a home cleanup that we funded from our emergency contingency fund at a cost of under $75. And all of that meant that the safety risks were mitigated and the home care services could come into the home.
So we chose these case studies to give you a glimpse of what we're doing, and we can let you know that and share with you that this is happening in all 5 municipal units. It's not just one area or this area or that area. It's the need is everywhere. Safety needs can be very complex. They have a global impact on the lives of seniors, well, on all of us. And our program works one-to-one with many seniors to help them create and carry out their safety plan. It's client-directed. Our role is to support the client's right to make choices while offering information, resources, and supports. So that's how we fit in.
So we are eternally grateful for the funding that we receive from the 5 municipalities in Lunenburg County, which is assigned proportionately to population. And the total amount from the county comes to approximately the same amount that we get from the province. So $25,000 annually from the province, $27,000 from the total of the 5 counties, 5 municipalities. And we are asking this year for continued funding from your municipality at the same rate as last year. You'll be glad to hear, not an increase. So $1,275 was the rate last year, and that's what we're hoping that you will fund this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Penny. And thank you for that presentation outlining the important work that you guys do. We do have 2 minutes left, so if there are any questions. Councillor Halverson.
Just curious, you mentioned that you've got the 2 funding streams. I'd be curious to know, are there other private partners that are also involved in fundraising? And have you spoken at all with the province about perhaps increasing their share?
Yeah, let Penny.
So the answer about the province is yes, we have asked for an increase, partly because Lunenburg County has a very large population and a very large geography for these 2 people to cover and doing the work that you heard about. And every senior safety program in the province is funded at the same rate. So even a municipality that has 8,000 population gets the same amount. So it depends very much on the other partnerships that we can create. So we do develop a patchwork of funding with like the Law Foundation of Nova Scotia. The United Way has been extremely generous from the very beginning, from 2010 onwards. They're trying to wean us off now, which is the correct thing to be doing. So we do look for other funding wherever we can. But we have specifically asked the province to increase the amount above the base rate for the larger the larger programs, and especially where they've demonstrated the need.
We just recently also received a grant from New Horizons for a technological literacy program. So we'll be able to take a laptop, printer, and so on, go into the homes of individuals who need supports with that, and be able to help them do what they need to do online, which is particularly useful, especially now.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more quick question, if there is any. Seeing none, thank you guys for coming in
Thank
and
you.
sharing your work with us.
If anyone would like to know more about our program or talk to us in person or has a referral, please reach out. And we left some pamphlets out in the hallway.
Perfect, thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much, everyone. And thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
All right. That takes us on to correspondence, petitions, and proclamations consideration. So there's a copy of a Town of Mahone Bay letter to the Premier seeking Accessibility Act implementation funding for municipalities. I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that for council's benefit.
Thanks, Your Worship. Pardon me, maybe I'm a little too close to the mic. This is a very helpful letter. The town could also further endorse it if it wished. I think we sent an earlier letter, but it's very timely. This is a significant request of all municipalities across the province to ensure we comply with the provincial deadlines for Accessibility Act implementation. Our draft budget for 21-22 includes a full-time staff person that would be shared amongst all 5 municipalities in the county, and we'll explore that further in upcoming draft budget discussions. So this is very timely. This would be of great assistance to all municipalities across the province and in this county in particular.
All right. Is it any councillor's pleasure to make a motion or proposal in that regard? Is the ask is simply to endorse the... Okay.
Sorry, the more voices that are heard on an ongoing basis, I think is helpful.
Okay, so moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Second is a Department of Municipal Affairs letter advising a wastewater treatment plant and collection system pre-design funding extension. I'll see if staff would like to speak to that as well, just briefly for council's benefit.
That's for information, Your Worship. I might throw it over to Ms. Dagley, though, as our finance director. We don't intend to change our project schedule deadline, but I'll defer to her for the financial implications.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was, this was the capital funding that we had received from the province that was to be expended by the end of March of 2021. And we had requested the extension because of delays, some due to COVID and et cetera, with getting out our tender for this project. And so they've graciously agreed to that and have extended it right out through to March 31st of next year. But as Ms. Renton has mentioned, we don't have an intent to change the project timeline.
Thank you for that update. Sounds good. Always good when you get an extension on grants. That takes us on to item C, and this is the late-breaking request for our annual proclamation related to Purple Day. So I'm just wondering if the assistant clerk can speak to that briefly.
This has been an annual request from Epilepsy Maritimes. We have done this the past 2 or 3 years, I think now. Purple Day is an international day of recognition for people with epilepsy and promoting some epilepsy awareness as a very common neurological condition that still carries a great deal of stigma, weirdly enough. So this is a request they make of us every year, and the text of the proclamation is here. I'll just scroll down a little.
Okay. So if it's anybody's pleasure to move that Friday be so proclaimed, moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Burgos. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That takes us on to item 7A, business arising from the minutes and unfinished business. And the first item there is our comprehensive community plan first quarterly progress report. So I will turn it over to Ms. Renton to walk us through that.
Thank you, Your Worship. And if council was so inclined, because this might take a few minutes, try not to go over 10 minutes. If Mr. Luchek wanted to go first, Your Worship, that would be fine, but at your pleasure. Proceed as follows? Okay. Okay, thank you. So the first slide, we prepared a PowerPoint presentation for council's consideration. Hopefully this encapsulates accurately and fully the various activities that we've accomplished just since November 17 of last year, which is really quite significant. As indicated, it is a quarterly progress report. If you can bear with me, I'm going to read through some notes that correspond with the slides, just because I think there is a lot of material to get through and I don't want to miss any of the significant accomplishments or thanks to staff and council along the way. So as mentioned, we've prepared this first quarterly report covering the period of November 17, 2020, when the community plan, or CCP as we'll probably keep referring to it henceforth, as part of Project Lunenburg, was formally approved by the newly elected council. And so this report covers the time frame from November 17, 2020 to March 17, 2021 to make the timeline for being included in this meeting agenda. And our town managers have created the progress report summarizing community accomplishments to date and the various work items in process. On the next slide that I'd ask Heather to bring up. Thank you. This is a familiar image to you. It's a very condensed and content-rich document. It comprises the 35 action items that have been prioritized in the comprehensive community plan process with the help of the consultants Upland, who selected these 35 items, as you're very familiar with. And the mayor has, I think, aptly described this in a metaphor, looking at this document as a runway to our takeoff on the actual and more detailed implementation of the 35 items. So these are some base or foundational documents that we've prepared. It reflects a weighting exercise as well that we went through, as was recommended by Uplands Consulting, to try and prioritize the various strategic plans, items, and the strategic directions contained within it. And there are also contained in this Gantt chart sequencing activities. So you'll see various phases that Heather and colleagues have been very adept at including, so that you can see that there are many components or stages to implementation as referred to in the original CCP document that are illustrated in this diagram. In this more recent version that you see before you tonight, Council, it includes some minor timeline adjustments. Some of them have had to be made because they are dependent upon budget 21, 22 approvals and implementation. And the managers will go through that with you in more detail in a few minutes. We've also tried to update and more accurately capture some of the more recent progress on many of the action items, particularly in the housing aspect of the report, changing some of the colors as we've achieved certain significant milestones from yellow, which indicated that that particular item might be more dependent on perhaps legislative or financial preconditions having been accomplished before it could be transferred to the color green, which indicates that it's a more actively undertaking action items. And the red line, which again can be hopefully a little bit more readily seen on your own iPad devices, is the timeline for this month, the first quarter. We'll try and customize that red line in future that it more accurately depicts actually where we are in the progress, because the line might not be a purely straight line. Henceforth, we think that it's likely that the line will be a bit jagged, and there'll be some areas where we make greater progress and some that we don't achieve the same progress because perhaps there's, again, preconditions to actioning those items. In the next slide, we didn't want to lose sight of the fact that Lunenburg has traditionally been an extremely active and accomplished community, and it doesn't stand alone on one plan. There are many plans that the town has undertaken over the years, and many of those continue to be part of our backbone of operations, and they thread their way throughout our budget and operational plans. And so this slide shows the CCP, the Comprehensive Community Plan, as being at the center of that wheel. We have a number of other components, as you can see, our Municipal Climate Action Plan, which is ever more important after events like Hurricane Dorian, our Source Water Management Plan with the acquisition of additional lands in our watershed that becomes increasingly important. We have a larger land asset to maintain the integrity of our water system. Our accessibility plan that Mr. McDonald's spearheaded for us, and as we just talked about, funding requirements for. Our cultural action plan, which we've had community presentations about, and we have membership, as you well know, on that board, and we'll have a staff report in future. Our Anti-Racism Special Committee is working actively on an action plan to achieving desired goals and objectives. And we had an earlier integrated community sustainability plan. So they're all very important documents, and we thought it might be helpful as well to look in future when we become more detailed in our work and regarding the implementation of the comprehensive community plan, to try and consolidate some of those additional plans and reports that are circling the CCP. There are some additional plans that aren't even noted on this slide. We sort of ran out of icons to insert, but don't want to lose sight of the town's active transportation plan, which is still a work in progress. It had a tremendous number of recommendations, some that came with significant price items attached to them, so that can't be lost sight of. We have a waste reduction strategy as well that could appear quite readily in that diagram, and a climate change declaration that the previous council had implemented as well. So in our next components of our presentation, Your Worship, we'd like to just go through some of the icons that we use throughout the rest of the presentation. So I'll turn it over to Heather, and then other managers will jump in and update you on some of the elements that they've been working on. Thank you.
So, excuse me. So yes, I just wanted to quickly review this key because you'll find that we will likely use these icons that represent the 10 strategic directives of the CCP. You've seen finance has already integrated them into some of their reporting around the budget, and we'll likely be using these as little indications of items that are addressed in, say, reporting and so on. So you'll see these for a time. And similar to the budget, this status report has been organized around the strategic directives rather than going action item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're back to grouping so that we can see how they affect each other and how they affect departments.
Right, so back to me just for a moment before I turn it over to other colleagues, Your Worship. The first up then is our community structure icon that's depicted on this slide before you now. The one that I'll speak to most immediately is Action 8, the Study and Planning for a Sustainable Energy District. This is an interdepartmental initiative that Public Works, Planning, Corporate Services has been involved with. It is included in the draft 2021-22 budget for consideration of an energy study. And so we've actioned it to that particular progress step, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Sutherland.
Thank you. Action 10 is Blockhouse Hill. So the main part of that will be dependent on our new planning documents, the rezoning part. We're looking at a medium density residential area for Blockhouse Hill. And that, of course, that won't come into play until the end of December when our planning documents hopefully will be through the province approved. The 2020 or 2022 feasibility study, that's to explore the conditions of sales and models for inclusion of affordable housing, and that would be an RFP. And I've slated that for next year, just as we're ramping up for development there. So the next slide is a feasibility study for long-term residency. It's more of an exploration, and we're looking at this for 2022 just for budget constraints, and it's a long-term initiative. Regulating short-term rentals. So there's two proposals here. One, it would be to regulate through the land use bylaw, and another one is to have a short-term rental bylaw, and that will be dependent upon enabling legislation as well. And Action 20 is, this is a good one, relationships with housing stakeholders to foster collaboration. So in the CCP, it's specific to Housing Nova Scotia, but there's a whole community out there of people that are stakeholders in housing and affordable housing. And we're looking at doing a communication protocol this summer. Action 25 is exploring actions towards alternative housing models, and that this will be enabled in our planning documents. We're hoping to have a workshop in 2022, so in about a year. And it will also include an RFP looking at the feasibility study for partnerships. And this may, if we go to a land trust, this may be a while because there's no enabling legislation right now for that, but it'll look at other things as well. And Action 33 is monitor and analyze housing demand and supply, so demographic indicators. We have great information now in our housing discussion paper, so it'd be great to always have that amount of information. We will be able to use, once we get Town Suite online, we'll have a lot of information on housing and how many building permits, how many accessory suites, those types of things. And we'll also, after the next census in 2021, whenever that's finished and all the data is gathered, we will probably ask for to have a consultant do another demographic analysis for us because you're going to need it for the next 5 years, right? So that's what that's about, and I guess it's over to Ms. Renton. I think it is. Servicing? Oh. You will need the mic.
All right. So the actions within Public Works the engineering portions thereof. Action 1, as we discussed before, has to do with various smaller projects in the wastewater collection arena of the town. There's, as you know, there's been some engineering completed over the last couple of years, and we've identified a portfolio of various projects in order for us to upgrade and make our wastewater collection facility a bit better than it is today. Lift station work, GIS system development leading to a master plan within our distribution system, diversion of the stormwater, commercial sewer compliance, etc. So we have a bunch of those activities, projects identified in the upcoming budget. The upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, we all know that fairly well. As you know, that we've executed and we kicked off the pre-design or the feed stage of the project. And that's been going very well so far. We still have a target date to get all that information together and presented by the end of June. And with that, thanks to Lisa, that we have our budget extended for the upcoming year for that. So lots of thanks with that. Again, for front end work, we're still targeting for results at the end of June. Action number 6, having to do with the municipal facilities. Paul Bracken, our facilities manager, has a draft facilities report completed and in for review that takes all of the facilities under control and custody of the town, and puts together a plan for each one of those. And that's a 25-year facilities plan, and we plan on having that reviewed and updated and completed by the end of April. So when we've identified a bunch of budgeting and planning activities, condition assessments in the upcoming year, and 22 and 23. And of course, that also constitutes our routine repairs and maintenance that we have to do with the various facilities throughout the year. And to Heather.
Okay, we've got a couple of items in mobility, and those link through to some recreation items, which you'll hear as we go. Whoops, I didn't change the slide. There we go. So action 29 is improving connectivity between Old and New Town. And this will require this is not an immediate task this year because it will require some funding to review potential sites and signage and traffic diversion and so on. And closely related is action 30, the plan for the new visitor, employee, and bus parking areas outside Old Town. So between these two items, some of the active transportation items that we had been working on with that subcommittee, such as the Bicycle Nova Scotia concept plan and some other improvements to connectivity that were part of that, are kind of rolled into this at this stage.
And back to me, Your Worship. Looking at the economic development icon that's before you, or will be before you. So we've got 3 central items there, some of which I think will be tremendous assets to the implementation of the plan in its entirety. The first is the enhancement of relationships with our surrounding communities. And I think the presentation earlier this evening spoke beautifully to that. You know, this tremendous work that's being done amongst the 5 member municipalities in the Seniors Safety Partnership, to think of the number of home visits that were done and the way in which that program reach has expanded is tremendous, to have 2 staff members and whatnot, and the very active board support. And we continue our work on a number of other intermunicipal relationship building items. There's everything from IT, fire inspection, that hopefully will be before council before not too long. The tremendous joint accessibility initiatives that we spoke of briefly earlier this evening. We have ongoing support as well with post-secondary institutions, with NSCC and the NASCAD Artist in Residence program that have all been tremendously successful in the community. As well, we have included under action item number 23 a staff position for supportive economic development activities. We have made some early efforts to explore senior government funding. We haven't found anything right on point as of yet, but we remain hopeful, and we do have some of our provincial partners seeking alternative funding opportunities for us. So we remain quite positive about that. We have other options, though, we have identified. If we aren't able to secure full funding for that or part through the budget process, there are other options, such as a part-time consulting relationship that could also prove to be very successful and beneficial to the community. We have also noted under action item 26, Your Worship, the creation of an inventory of economic information. And that is a key task identified in the CCP document to make sure that we track our progress and measure the success of our accomplishments, or where there are shortcomings in the further alternative. Thanks, Your Worship. I'll turn it over to Arthur.
Thank you, Your Worship. Did we do action 16? We're skipping. We're on.
Action 16 is on the next slide under urban design.
Oh. Okay, action 22 is a policy to encourage accessibility and provide heritage design guidance. As we talked about earlier this evening, the Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan has been approved by Council and submitted to the province for their review. We're in the process now of initiating the town's accessibility operational plan, and I have upcoming meetings with different managers throughout the town. The heritage design guidelines are in progress with Project Lunenburg and Upland. And I actually have initiated a review of the town's street encroachment and building access bylaw. But there's a date of April to September 2021 for that. Also under action 31, accommodate new additions to heritage structures. Again, that's under Project Lunenburg and Upland in the development of our new Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw. And action 35, to ensure infill new developments is visually compatible, subordinate, and distinguishable from the historic place, is also part of Upland's project with regards to the Heritage Conservation District Plan and Bylaw review. So 16's on the next page, is it? Again, this is part of improving accessibility throughout the town. Lunenburg County Accessibility Plan, again, was approved by Council and submitted to the province. We're going to be initiating a review of the accessible parking areas in the town, parking areas and managed parking area lots, as well as town streets. And that will be initiated this summer from May to July. Then we're going to identify the locations where this additional accessibility parking areas could be implemented. And then hopefully have a budget submitted for council consideration in April of 2022, and then undertake those improvements during the summer of 2022. And I'll pass that over to the next person.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
so action 19 and 28 both have involved planning, they involve public works, so there's a number of cross-functionality involved with these ones. So items like activating streetscapes, so some of that will involves the requirement to do our inventory of the town through our GIS system that is coming, and Town Suite that Ms. Sutherland will be working with. And it will also includes a number of public works capital initiatives, such as the Tannery Road sidewalk land acquisition that we'll be talking about one piece of property a little bit later. But those kinds of items that we've been looking at for some time fit underneath this action item. Action 28, again, this is we currently actually have the tree trimming. I saw it on my street last week, so I'm not sure if they're completed yet, but they are ongoing as we speak. And then looking towards the future, that again will involve some involvement from planning, and Public Works will be speaking to forestry experts about increasing the planting around town. And Ms. Renton outlined at the budget meeting last week about the possibility of some partnership program like a Resilient Roots, so that we make the most of our assets. So under environment and sustainability, we have a number of items here. Items 21 and 27 are both really requiring the planning and heritage enabling documents to be completed before we can do a whole lot more with these, because they involve regulation of buildings near the shoreline and some wind and solar policies. So those documents will help us develop plans around that. So those are at that stage. And then these partnerships to encourage energy efficient retrofits. There is funding in the draft town budget for some consultation around studying the opportunities, risks, partnerships, just to enable that to happen within our, especially around electricity. Action 15 is where, so ongoing community learning and dialogue. Again, the sea level rise piece of that is awaiting some fundamental documents and some of the flood studies that we have ongoing. But items such as that are connected with climate change and so on, this is where items like a climate change declaration that report had been looking at doing some of that, and the waste reduction strategy that had been approved by the previous council, those items can fall under here because they have quite a lot of educational programs. So it's a nice way to connect some of the work we already had in progress. Then we look at culture and recreation. So a number of these items are connected as well. So actions 11 and 12, and there'll be another one in governance, fostering inclusivity in programming and leadership and building relations with BIPOC residents and organizations. That's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, if you're not familiar with that acronym. So though those items fall under Action 18, which is our special committee, our anti-racism special committee, who are working actively on developing a municipal action plan against racism and discrimination. We have our third meeting later this week, actually. So it's quite it's a really great diverse group of people who are working on this. As you know, we have our meeting minutes coming back to council to be updated on those as we go. I had indicated here that 2 voting member seats needed to be filled. One of those has now been filled, so we're just looking for 1 further person. The other thing around the inclusivity piece is that for a number of years now, we have been doing some special events in collaboration with diverse stakeholders, such as the Pride flag raising, which we've been doing for about 5 years now. The Mi'kmaq Grand Council flag is about 3 or 4 years now. Transgender Day of Mourning was new this year, and the Pan-African flag raising was new this year, but those will continue going forward. And, oops, sorry, I jumped a slide. And then with actions 24 and 32, this brings us back to those connectivity items that we spoke of earlier on with mobility. So these connect to the connectivity between Old Town and New Town. So item number 30 would need to be done first before we looked at 24, despite their ranking because of the connection that looking at the bicycle network, et cetera, would be needed before we could approach something like Develop Nova Scotia to look at increased waterfront access. And then action 32, there's a connection here to number 6, which is Mr. Bracken's long-term facilities plan. So that again would need to be completed before we start looking at specifically arts and recreation facilities. So those tie together there. And I will turn it back over to Ms. Renton.
And I will try and close it out for you and offer to take any questions, and I'm sure my colleagues will as well too, Your Worship. So this is the final icon under the strategic direction main headings of governance. And we will start to see again some cross connections that have been touched on before, most recently by Ms. McCollum. The reformation of municipal committees, looking at the primary tasks of the Anti-Racism Special Committee, which are underway, and we've touched on those already. We have also noted Action 7. There are some crossover areas there as well regarding intensification of shared service initiatives, and I know the mayor and deputy mayor have been very involved with reinvigorating local and regional shared service discussions and regional meetings to encourage and deepen our relationship with our other municipal colleagues. Our draft budget reflects many of those opportunities as well for possible consideration. On the next slide, we continue with a canvas of the governance items. Action 9 includes the organizational review, and we've talked about that briefly already, that there was an internal assessment done with some preliminary budget forecasting, and then a external consultant review was included in the draft budget. That's noted for your upcoming consideration. Interestingly, that would be an operating item, not necessarily a capital budget item, which can at times be more achievable from a financial point of view. The communication plan that Ms. McCallum is working on as well is noted as Action 14. And we have Action 34, which I've touched on in another action item regarding the assessment and measurement of our performance through the local economy and implementation of the plan. In our final slide, we wanted to just briefly pause, and I promised that, to just recap some of the key dates, the milestones that we've progressed through to get to this particular quarterly juncture. I think we've worked at a fairly rapid pace together. There's been good collaboration with council and staff that has made this possible. Again, noting the November 17th adoption of this plan as the new strategic plan for the next 5-year period for council and the community as a whole. We had a December 17th exercise where we provided an overview of the various weighting exercises and processes that we went through for council's consideration. Next, on January 18th of this calendar year, we went through the Gantt chart review. That was the preliminary 35 action items, highlighting some of the key ones that had come through the weighting exercise that was earlier done. And then on February 16th, we provided the one-pager action summary that you saw on the Gantt chart, the consolidated document. And on your agenda later on for tonight's meeting, there is consideration of approving the CCP 5-year work plan that was put forward by the Committee of the Whole membership. And as well, we did want to note again that our draft budget for this upcoming year is really formulated around the comprehensive community plan. It's been completely redesigned with that in mind, and I think an excellent job was done by staff in trying to ensure that all of the CCP elements, or as many as possible, were brought forward in a very good sort of snapshot portrayal of the importance of that plan in achieving the future success and ongoing success of the community. So I think those are some really remarkable achievements in a very short period of time. I thank my fellow colleagues at the staff level and council for their collaboration. Well, you know, I didn't really know that we'd get this far so fast. So it's very nice to be at this particular time in our work. And we're here, as I say, Your Worship, to answer any questions, obviously, that council may have. And we will be working on an annual work plan, as is proposed in the second recommendation from the Committee of the Whole meeting most recently held.
Thank you, Ms. Renton, and I'll extend on behalf of council thanks to all of staff for pulling that first quarterly report together. I'm sure that was not an insignificant amount of work, and hopefully now that the template's built, it'll be easier just to populate the next time around. And with that, I will open the floor to any questions that councillors may have related to this information report. Council Old Faithful, Councillor Halverson.
Just a couple quick shots here again. Thanks. That was really comprehensive and much appreciated. Really helps the understanding where we are. I do have a quick question about the town suite. I know we've talked about this, but maybe I'm getting addled. But what's the holdup on town suite at this point? I love a good giggle. That's indicating.
Well, the town suite that Ms. Sutherland is referring to is specific to mapping and planning, and it is part of a larger joint initiative with MODL and Town of Bridgewater and Chester. There was some IT delays during COVID where the IT resources were off doing other things like making sure that we could Zoom and have council meetings and that sort of thing. They have regrouped and are working on some of those final pieces to bring it together. They had hoped to have some pieces done for the 1st of March. They're still working out some of those final pieces, but it is coming together. We're closer than we've ever been. But I don't have a current update. The last update I had is 3 weeks ago. I'm sorry.
Worship, the municipality district of Lunenburg is piloting it right now, as I understand. Jeff Merrill is leading that project, so he wants to ensure that he has it right first before it rolls out to the other communities.
Thanks for that. It seems like it's a linchpin item, so just wanted to make sure we're aware of where we're at. Thank you.
Well, just on that, Your Worship, it is and it isn't. Sort of, it's important to some of the joint building inspection initiatives, right? So looking at the four or five municipalities in the county working together to share building inspection services, but it doesn't underlie any of the other project elements for us. I mean, we continue to work jointly with MODL on building inspection and things like that. The hope is that it will improve services in the sense that we'll have a more efficient database when we move in that conglomerated building sort of circle. We'll have 4 units working on building inspection together as opposed to just 2 now. So just want to qualify that.
Thank you, Ms. Rent. Any further questions of council on this? All right, seeing none. Thank you for that, staff, and we will look forward to the next one. That takes us on to the budget variance report. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Dagley to give us the budget variance report.
Well, actually, thank you for the opportunity, Your Worship, but I don't have anything of particular note to draw to council's attention. And certainly, if there's questions, I'm happy to try to field those if I have the information.
All right, thanks for that. We will open the floor to questions then. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Through to Lisa, I just have a question regarding the ice resurfacer. So apparently, we'll probably soon take delivery of this asset. And I know in the last council, there was a lot of talk about, how we do fundraising and whatnot. So I was just wondering, it's always my biggest fear by pre-approving it that, of course, the fundraising would kind of fade away. So I just wanted to know where we might be at with some of the funding for that particular asset.
Certainly, that I believe the delivery is, April, May, something to that effect. But the funding is all in place when we awarded the tender. There was an anonymous donation, and there were some additional grants from MODL, and so all the funding for that particular asset is in place. I don't have those details here, but there would have been a staff report at the time when we awarded that tender, and it would have included those details at that time. We can certainly recirculate that to council if we wanted us to.
Okay. Any further questions of council on the budget variance report? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the added item related to the Angus Walters House, and we have Mr. Luchek with us to take us through that. A draft motion has been provided, so just wondering if you could summarize that quickly for us, Mr. Luchek.
Sorry, forgot about the mask. I'd be happy to do that, Your Worship. The challenge with the sale of the property at 37 Tannery Road has been that a number of steps had to be taken with respect to that property prior to its sale. The one that proved the most challenging was the subdivision of the front portion of the lot for the purposes of building a future sidewalk. The initial plan with respect to this step was to treat this as we would any other town-related road project that involved acquisition of property, which would be exempt from subdivision approval as it is a acquisition of land for municipal purposes. Unfortunately, the registrar of these takes a very narrow view of the word acquisition, and when all land involved is owned by a single party and no title is changing hands, it was deemed to not be an acquisition. Our fallback plan was to simply subdivide the necessary portion pursuant to the usual subdivision process, but unfortunately, the lot in question is too small to be subdividable as a standalone parcel, so that, again, was not an option. That left us scrambling for some more creative solutions, and the feeling among all parties involved, all council involved, was that it would be technically possible to declare a portion of a lot as a public street, thereby severing it from the remainder of the lot without actually having subdivision approval in place. And that was the resolution that was last before council, and that's what was approved. Unfortunately, the Registry of Deeds again takes the position that a parcel must be a standalone parcel before it can be declared a public street. That is not explicitly stated in the legislation, but it is certainly a plausible interpretation of the legislation. So that brought us back to square one on this. Our final option with respect to this issue, which we had considered, but it appeared to be more cumbersome than all of the other options available, was to essentially engage in a series of transactions structured to meet the requirements of the Act. What I mean by that is conveying the parcel in its entirety to the buyers under an agreement whereby they will convey back to us the piece that we need, thereby meeting the requirements for an acquisition of land from a third party for municipal purposes. When our last approach of declaring a public street over a portion of the existing lot was rejected by the registrar, The registrar also recommended this approach. So they are on board and suggesting this as a way out of this technical quagmire. So the resolution before council today authorizes that approach, and with this in place, the transaction will likely close tomorrow. We have a deed drafted for the buyers of the property to execute and return to us, and then we'll be able to record it and have the necessary land for the sidewalk in place.
Thank you, Mr. Luchek. Are there any questions of Mr. Luchek at this time? Councillor Sam.
Is there something in place that prevents the signing of the deed and the property going to the purchaser, and then they say, no, we're not going to sign off on the transfer of it back to the town? Is there something in place to protect us, the town, from that?
Thank you for this question. The way that counsel for the purchasers and I have proposed to resolve this is, on any typical real estate closing, there will be escrow conditions where funds in the deed are held in trust until all the conditions are met. So the condition of tomorrow's sale will be that the deed being provided to the purchasers cannot be released until we have the other deed back from them, along with the funds for the purchase. It's unheard of for a lawyer to not comply with escrow conditions. That's kind of a one strike and you're out kind of situation. So that I think is the most practical way of handling that.
Okay. Any further questions at this time? Is it anybody's pleasure to move the draft motion as recommended? Moved by Councillor Halverson, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Is there any discussion or debate? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, that takes us on to committee meeting minutes and recommendations. So the Joint Occupational Health and Safety Committee met March 4th, and that's been provided for information. The Anti-Racism Special Committee also met March 4th, and there is a recommendation there for revised terms of reference from the committee, set out in Schedule A. I think those are fairly clear for everyone. So if somebody would like to move the motion as presented, we'll give that honor to the chair. Councillor Duggan, is there a seconder? Councillor Sanford. Is there any discussion or debate on that? Councillor Halverson.
Before we vote on, I would actually just like to commend the committee on changing some of the language in here. I think it's very, what they've done is very thoughtful, and I think it's a much more inclusive statement of procedure than what we originally had. So just well done.
Okay. Any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. There's a meeting of the Project Lunenburg Steering Team, which is noted. And then that takes us on to Protective Services Committee recommendations. I don't know if the chair wants to speak to that.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, maybe for the first recommendation, maybe just to deviate from the script a little bit, I think it might be more appropriate to recommend that draft budget be adopted into our budget process. Would you say, Lisa, that would be more appropriate than pre-approving that particular item and then it's there, like, because that gives everyone a chance to.
Yeah, I think, Deputy Mayor, that's sort of how it's been drafted in the agenda anyway, but I know at the committee level, it was more approve, recommend for approve, but it's, yes.
So, I would move that we adopt the draft budget into our budget process then for the 2021-22 Protective Services Operation and capital budgets for the districts, the town council and districts 1 and 2 fire commission.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Sanford? Any discussion or debate? Oh, yes.
Can I just ask a quick question? I was
Yeah.
just reading through the minutes and just where it said where motion was carried, but Brian Kaiser, David Afford, and David Bago voted against, it was negative. Does that mean that they're not contributing towards the new truck as the
Well, that's the next discussion.
That's the
I guess
next
we can have. Yeah,
Okay.
that's more. Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, on this motion, any discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. And then there is the second motion,
Yes, the
second recommendation from the
The
committee.
second recommendation, yes, is to recommend pre-approval to town council for the ordering and of a replacement fire rescue truck for delivery in the 22-23 fiscal year. So I move that recommendation.
So moving it straight up, not as referral to the budget process. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Sanford? Is there any discussion or debate on that?
So can I ask that question again?
Yeah, if I'll try to answer that if anyone else in the committee can, if I, leave anything out. They are not saying they're not going to contribute to the fire truck. They're saying that they're not prepared to pre-approve it at this point in time. So they're vague in their in what they'll commit to in funding, but they're firm in not committing to it at this particular time.
Is that the normal for the district to kind of be that way?
This is new to, it's a little new. Yeah, I haven't experienced this yet, so I don't know if we've ever experienced anything like this in the past. Aaron, I'll refer to you.
Since I've been chief, we bought the ladder truck, the engine last year, now this one. And in the contract, the capital budget states that capital purchases are negotiated. I've fought for years to get this changed to 50-50 because every truck to me is 50% for either or. So they have kind of not committed for the ladder truck. They did commit to pre-approval. The same idea I want to do for the rescue this year is they did commit that to the engine last year. But like Deputy Mayor said, they're not committing. I'm confident that they will. It is, my opinion, the fire department's opinion is this truck is 50% just as important in the district as the town. So I'm really hoping that they do commit, but they just refuse to do it for the pre-approval this year.
Thank you.
Okay. So the motion to pre-approve, Councillor Halverson?
Through you, Mayor, to Chief Romke. What's your confidence level in the ability of this particular truck to navigate and service the rest of the municipality? Is there any situation where you see that maybe it won't make it down a road or it won't get to where it needs to get to?
The biggest problem with our trucks is they're long. There's different types of chassis out there. There's commercial chassis, which a regular milk truck company go by and put a box onto it. The wheels are in front of the driver. The wheelbase is longer. We did have an engine we just got rid of was a commercial chassis. Our ladder truck, our engine we bought last year is what's called a custom cab. It's built from the wheels up for a fire truck. It's got many safety reasons and everything. For getting around in the district and the town, this is a huge advantage of this type of truck. The wheelbase is shorter. The front wheels are actually behind the driver. I could probably take our ladder truck and make a circle in the parking lot and it'd be tighter than my Ford truck. So the roads in the district, the biggest problem there I've found is the trees, they're not cut back far enough or high enough. A few years ago, I wrote a letter to the district commission asking to, educate the public and how far to come back. The roads themselves, if there's a decent structure at the end of that driveway or road, the road itself is going to be, we haven't had that issue in the past.
Just to follow up on that, what about weight? Any weight concerns about navigating roads through the county?
The weight for the road, you mean, or weight for the truck itself?
The weight of the truck. Do you have any concerns about the weight of the truck? Not the roads not being able to bear the weight on the
That's
truck itself?
no, these trucks, the bigger companies, they have engineers and that's their job. The engine we bought last year, we asked them, can we put 1,500 gallons of water on a single axle? Their engineers did it all the work. They said yes. There was a smaller truck bought quite a few years ago by the district that it was in service for a year and come to find it was overweight. It was on a commercial chassis. It was sold within a year. We had not much to do with that design, but these trucks are, they're like I say, they're built from the wheels up. The engineers are there. They will not sell us a truck. If we walked in there and said, we want to put 2,000 gallons on a single axle anyway, they will not do it. They will not say, okay, we'll sell you a truck just to sell it. They'll flat out say, no, we're not doing it. So yes, and again, the custom chassis is the big advantage. You can get You know, they're built wider, they're built for carrying equipment. So it's a huge advantage.
Councillor Duggan?
Sort of along the same lines, do you have any concerns about the amount of water that you can carry with the new vehicle?
Again, the last truck, the engine we bought last year, our first out engines, you know, they used to have 800 gallons of water on. We were able to put 1,500 on because we looked ahead. We used to have 2 tankers, which their main purpose was carry just water for the engines. We were able to look at what we needed for a rescue this year. We were able to build this truck last year with the extra 700 gallons of water on, so we could get rid of the other truck, so we didn't have to look at buying a $400,000 or $500,000 truck this year. The truck we're getting now doesn't have water on it. This is a rescue truck that, like I said in my report, 20 years ago when we designed this truck, we didn't do vehicle extrication, which needs the jaws to cut the cars apart, airbags, a whole bunch of equipment. We didn't do that 20 years ago. We didn't do ice rescue, we didn't do water rescue. We do all that now. The truck is jammed full. We can't get at the stuff as quick as we want to when we get to a call. So it's custom built, the cabinets are custom built the way we want to put the equipment so that if we need our jaws, we don't have to get a whole bunch of things out first, because every time you need something, it's in the back. It doesn't matter how you design it. So it's going to be custom made, that it's mounted, that we can get there and grab it and go. But this truck here that we want doesn't carry water. It's just a rescue truck. That's it.
Any further questions? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That takes us on the next recommended items are from the Committee of the Whole, and this is 2 recommendations for the approval of the 5-year work plan as presented and as discussed at that committee, and also to make sure that we're doing annual work planning for each of the 5 years. So I'll look to see if it's anybody's pleasure. I'm the chair, so the chair shouldn't do it. Moved both, Councillor Mosier? Both moved by Councillor Mosier. Is there a seconder for both? Councillor Birtles. Is there any discussion or debate on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That takes us on to our last piece of business, new business. This is a request from the South Shore Public Libraries to replace reading program signage on the grounds of the Academy and the cemetery, for which council permission is required through the land use bylaw. There is a draft motion as provided. Is it anybody's pleasure to move that? Moved by Councillor Ernst, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Any questions? Discussion, debate? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion's carried. There is no in-camera meeting tonight, and there being no further business, we stand adjourned.